Friends, pray with me. God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations in all of our hearts be pleasing in your sight. Amen. So our continuing theme as we've been exploring the book of Acts is that God's Spirit shows up in surprising people and places and moments. Grace breaks out where we least expect it. Let's do a recap. A Roman centurion joins the movement. Women are empowered to lead. The chief persecutor of the movement becomes Paul, the apostle. Gentiles and outsiders are welcomed. But like every great epic story, the empire strikes back. You might destroy the Death Star in episode 1, or resurrection might destroy the power of sin and death, but the empire persists. And our series continues to explore Paul's resilience and setbacks and threats, and now even jail, to live out the great truth. Love is what we need. It is the force more powerful in our lives. Now, Paul and Silas, they're not looking for trouble, but it found them. They were trying to deal with a challenging situation, this woman that's following them around. And, you know, in those days, there was no diagnostic and statistical manual for diagnosis. They just said she had a demon. And we might think that this is going to start out as another miracle story, but that's not really quite the point, because helping this woman means she can no longer function as a soothsayer, and her master's losing money. Setting her free from exploitation means dismantling the profit system that was based on her suffering. So Paul and Silas are arrested. It says they're stripped, they're beaten, they're thrown in jail. Now, an important sidebar here, Paul and Silas are Roman citizens. It is illegal to beat them and strip them. It is illegal to throw them in prison without a trial. Something is very wrong here. When a Roman citizen, a mob can take them and the magistrates will beat them, this is against the law. It shows that violence has replaced the rule of law. The once great ideals of empire have failed in this moment, and protecting wealth and power become the hidden agenda. And part of the success of the Jesus movement is that it reveals the contradictions of empire. Because one face, it's all strength and honor. You know, senators in togas and laurel wreaths and the statues in the great city of Rome. But the other face of Rome is crucifixion and violence, imprisonment, tools that dehumanize to enforce control. And Jesus' followers come and they're offering a better world, a way based on human dignity, grounded in agape love. Now, a quick sidebar, you'll be happy to know that in the next chapter of Acts, a higher court steps in and releases them and forces an apology. So let's hear it for the higher courts and justice. Jail is not a place where we experience love and affirmation. I visited many jails when I did screenings for a transitional housing program. Every hour of the day minimizes your existence as a free human being. Day after day, year after year, imagining having no real space to call your own, no choice over who to be with, what to eat, where to go. There is a threat and a suspicion, love, or even a gentle human touch are hard to find. You're even separated from your friends and your family. As a former inmate said, it hardens you. It makes you distant. You become colder, more detached. I once encountered a man in our church parking lot in Poughkeepsie, New York. I saw him. He was powerfully built. His head was shaved. He had tattoos all over his arms and even on his cheek. And he was in tears. And I approached him, and he told me his parole officer had brought him from prison to the parking lot and said, "You need to meet the pastor and get in the shelter tonight or you're going back into prison." He was terrified. He had no idea what to do. When he thought of being in a shelter, an open bunk room with no prison bars to protect him from all the other people sleeping there, he didn't know who to trust. He had no compadres who protected each other in prison. He'd lost the ability to do simple things like just going into the store and buying something that he needed, let alone making out a resume. That prison had hammered free choice out of him. He had survived by hardening himself, but now he was more afraid being free than he was in prison. And we can imagine a prison in Philippi in the first century, likely airless, crowded, unsanitary. The text tells us that they're put in stocks and chained together in the inner part, the depths of the prison. And we might expect to hear about Paul and Silas in bitter despair. We might expect to read, this is their hour of the dark night of the soul, where they're wondering, where is God in this dank cell? But instead, the story highlights that in the midnight hour, they're singing hymns. I wonder what they sang. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. You know, we have 100 hymns or more in our hymnal that quote the letters of Paul. 100. He later wrote a letter to the Philippians where he was imprisoned. And I count 3 hymns that we know well that come just from the book of Philippians. Philippians 3. There's a verse in Be Thou My Vision, forgetting what lies behind and straining for what lies ahead, we press onward. Or Philippians 4 fits in with, it is well with my soul. The peace of God which passes all understanding will guard your hearts. Or a hymn we're singing today is based on Philippians 1:18, where Paul says, rejoice in all things, even in trials and suffering. And our closing hymn is, how can I keep from singing? We should look at that hymn, and I think Violet can put verse 3 up there for us. And let's sing it. What though my joys can I keep from singing? See, some words just stick in there. You know them, you sing them. And prison could not keep Paul and Silas from singing. Because music, it has this energy of its own, an energy that comes from poetry, from vibration, melody, harmony, blending together. It transports us into a higher consciousness. Singing has empowered most of our religious movements. We can go back to Benedictine monasticism as the monks chanted to sustain their lives even during the Dark Ages. Martin Luther put Christian words to popular beer hall songs and taught Reformation doctrine. Charles Wesley wrote hundreds of hymns that propelled the Methodist movement like a wildfire across the western U.S. And of course, the civil rights movement surged with the spirituals of the Black church. Singing produces solidarity. And Paul and Silas, they are together. They're participating in the reality of God being present even in their darkest hour. And so when we sing together, we are joining voices across centuries, across prison bars, across boundaries, and we remember that we are not alone. How many times have those words of a familiar hymn, they've drifted to you when you needed it most, and it's given you the comfort and the strength that you need in that moment? So they're singing in the inner sanctum, in chains, but they're interrupted by an earthquake. This is a seismic moment. It shakes prison doors, even the shackles from prisoners' legs. Those are some very highly specific effects of this earthquake. Random earthquakes don't break chains. The text is implying that there is a divine action involved here. And an earthquake is such an apt metaphor for where Paul is in his ministry, because the old foundations are starting to tremble. And the trembling doesn't just crack stone or break bars, they fracture certainties. The certainties of empire, the old foundations of domination through fear, obedience through violence. They fail. And in their place, something new arises, not the power of coercion, but the power of song. Not fear, but fellowship. The earthquake doesn't just free prisoners, it frees the story from the iron grip of empire. And then there's the jailer. The jailer, the very agent of state control, he is undone. Not by force, but by faith. He's been entrusted with a very simple task. Keep the prisoners silent, shackled, and contained. But instead of silence, he hears their singing. Instead of despair, he witnesses their defiant joy. And when the earthquake hits and the doors swing open, his first instinct is fear. Maybe not just fear of punishment from the higher-ups, but a fear for the rules seem to be changing. And in a moment of despair, he nearly takes his own life until Paul's voice stops him. Don't harm yourself. We're all here. You see, it's not just a tremor that shakes up the jailer. It's a tremor of grace. He realizes that the men he's been guarding were already free in their spirit. He, the one outside of the chains, was experiencing his own kind of prison. And now something breaks open in him. He takes them home. He washes their wounds. I don't think that was what he was supposed to be doing. And he's baptized. He moves from enforcer to disciple, from warden to worshiper. The song he once heard through the stone walls now is singing in his soul too. Grace doesn't just shake the walls, it rewrites the roles. This man was never meant to be just a jailer. He was meant to be part of the song. We often fear the ground shaking beneath us, but sometimes it shakes us free. Earthquakes, literal or spiritual, sometimes disrupt what no longer serves us. They shake open the prisons we didn't even know we were in. A prison of cynicism, a cell of false comfort to the suffering of the world, the solitary confinement of self-interest. These tremors invite us to come and live in a new way. And so here in Paul and Silas, we see a resilience born of song. In the jailer, we see a vulnerability that leads to rebirth. In the collapse of prison walls, we glimpse a truth that still breaks forth today. Love will find a way, even in the most locked down places. So I wonder, what prison might we be sitting in? What song waits to be sung? The Spirit hasn't stopped shaking foundations. The hymns of freedom still echo in jails, in refugee camps, protest marches, maybe even church. And the invitation is the same now as it always was. Move from guarding the old world to living in the new world that God is building. The Spirit still moves in surprising people and places, in midnight hymns, in broken systems, and in unlikely people, even us. So don't be afraid as the earth shakes. Sing through it. Amen.